Audit. Good morning all and welcome to this meeting of the Audit and Risk Committee. Hope you're all well. We particular welcome to Mark Jones of Audit Wales and to Alan Parry, our internal auditor, also to any members of the public who are up bright and early watching our deliberations as well. And we have had no apologies today, and I think we've got a full complement of members. So welcome to all members and officers present. So we've covered off on agenda item 1. There were no apologies. There are also no items of correspondence. Are there any declarations of interest that haven't been flagged to me already, or that if any members become aware during the course of the meeting of an emerging conflict or something that they become alerted to, then obviously please do so during the course of the meeting, but none have been advised. Are there any such interests that have come to light? No? Okay. And finally, there are no requests for public speaking at this session. So moving now rapidly to agenda item 5, the minutes of our last session. We've got the draft minutes of Audit and Risk from the 16th of September, and I'm seeking their adoption. Firstly, we just need to be alert to who's actually present for the full duration of that meeting. I believe a couple of colleagues were absent last time, as you'll be aware, and one of our colleagues was absent for a chunk of the meeting. So in the light of that, do I find a proposer for the adoption of those minutes? Craig has proposed, and Councillor Hugh Williams has seconded. So I've been advised that we can accept a show of hands on this matter rather than the going down any electronic route, as colleagues will be aware we've done in recent meetings also. So with the proposer and the seconder having spoken, can we take that show of hands now, please, including obviously abstention for those not in a position to vote? Okay. Any against? And any members abstaining on this matter? Yeah, Professor John, and absolutely. Excellent. Good. So that is the minutes successfully adopted. Good. Making fairly rapid progress. We've now got some substantive items. First of a series of substantive items. Agenda item 6, our internal audit update. And I'd ask Alan, please, to speak to that report. Alan.
The first of our items today is the annual report for the 2023-24 financial year. We have previously shared the opinion itself, which is in the blue box on page 1 of our report, because it was required for the accounts. But this is just then issuing the report formally. So the opinion is in the blue box, like I said, on page 1. We take you down to page 2. There's a summary of what we've carried out during the year and the comparison with the previous year. And on the annex of page 4 of the report is full detail on what was carried out and what wasn't in 23-24. I'll take it. Reports are being read in advance. I'll just pause there for questions.
Thank you, Alan. A couple of issues I'd like to raise. We've got Councillor Simon Howarth, who's indicated he's got a question. Simon.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I just want to ask reference to one of the items there for internal audit was the procurement side of it. We didn't carry that out. Is that scheduled now for 24-25 as a let's say top of the list for not carrying the process out last financial year? Thank you, Chair.
It's already been, the audit's already been carried out. The draft report is due imminently, so it's just been sent to our central hub. That will be issued as soon as it's ready now. So it's been through the quality assurance process our end. It's an advisory review rather than an assurance, though. We did on an advisory basis, and then we might well follow it up with an assurance report the next financial year.
Thanks, Ellen. Yes, that was referred to in the minutes that we referenced earlier, and the fact that there's going to be the follow through in this coming year. So there's a two-stage process in that regard. Professor John, who is muted? Who's still muted? You've obviously got a sticky mouse there. There we go.
Is that working?
Yeah, perfect.
All right. Diolch, Gareth, and thank you, Ellen. I too had a question on procurement, following Councillor Simon's view. With the forthcoming report, can we be advised, please, on whether procurement has been audited in light of our targets on sustainability and net zero, and rather than just being audited fiscally? And I'd ask similar questions about access systems, whether there's been an audit related to that, or has this just been an audit of financial terms?
It's been an advisory review on the content of the policy and procedural documents, because they were being prepared, and as part of that, to support the organisation in setting up those documents or reviewing them, shall we say, and the upcoming Procurement Act that's going to come into effect in the new calendar year. It was done on an advisory basis, mainly focused on processes and content of policy and strategy and procedural documents.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Craig.
Diolch yn fawr. Diolch am yr adroddiad, Ellen. Thank you for the report. Mine was just basically a comment, just that I was pleased to read overall that there was reasonable assurance. Obviously, we'd like it to be substantial, but reasonable assurance without any big red flags for us as an Audit and Risk Committee, I thought was good news going forward. And I think we mentioned at the last meeting that the procurement audit was postponed because we kind of knew some of the things that we needed to get in order before the audit took place. And obviously Richard's been here a while now, and so it sounds like a good idea that there's been a review of the processes and procedures and the policy that we're laying down. And I just want to pick up on Ellen's comment there about the new procedures coming into place for procurement in the calendar year that you mentioned. Are those as a result of us kind of leaving the EU?
Yeah, shall I come in and Ellen? That's all right. So yeah, so we sorry, I'll come in.
Sorry, Richard. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Absolutely. Sorry, misinterpreted who was speaking. Yeah, absolutely.
No, yeah. So I've redrafted the contract standing orders, and that's effectively what Ellen and her team have been looking at, and that does give kind of insight to the 23 Procurement Act. So we're potentially making sure that the financials, the contract standing orders, are in alignment with the relevant legislation. That's what we're trying to do. So my kind of plan is that it will be kind of in place by the new financial year, fully adopted and accepted by then. So that's with the recommendations that which T have put forward. So we'll adopt them and have them in the strategy moving forward.
And that's those the new legislation is specifically because of Brexit, basically, is it?
Well, it's I think the 23 Procurement Act was underway anyway. So it's more to do with larger contracts. I know obviously a lot of the legislation in the old contract standing orders did make reference to European legislation. So yes, that will be updated accordingly.
Okay, good. Thank you, Diolch.
Diolch yn fawr, Richard. Maybe you've helped to identify one of those elusive Brexit benefits that we've all been looking for, but I don't want to cause controversy this early on a Monday. Could I ask Elan, please, to give us a sense of the hardness of the currency of substantial assurance? How assured do you need to be in order for that? Because I'm familiar with ESTIN evaluations and various other accreditation bodies and so on. I mean, in terms of your own, how hard is it to win a substantial assurance? How well do we have to do? What does good look like? What does substantial assurance look like?
The assurance assessment is largely driven by the number of recommendations we make and the priority. So for a substantial assurance, we're looking at, it depends what they are, but around a handful of routine priority 3 recommendations maybe. When we issue a priority 2, an important recommendation, it tends then to lead to a reasonable assurance. So yeah, it's a judgment based on the number of recommendations and their priority. So like I said, maybe a handful of routine recommendations can give you a substantial assurance. I would say, though, at this point, I think it's important to point out that a reasonable assurance is a good assurance level. Yeah. And should we give substantial assurance across the board, the questions tend to get asked then if we're looking at the right things. Because as internal auditors, we're meant to be adding value to the organisation. We and to processes. So if it does happen, but I would question then for the planning of the next financial year, if we are giving a substantial assurance for everything, are we looking at the right things?
Okay, no, that's really helpful, I think. And linked to that, is there anything that we should be reading into the fact that in the box on page 2, we've got 7 important and 9 routine, and a much slimmer number in brackets from the previous year? What does that significant change? How should we interpret that significant change in the level of recommendations in terms of their number?
Well, we've to start with, we've carried out an extra audit in 23-24, given compared to the previous year. Yeah. That's probably been the main thing. But I would say that in addition to that, not that we are there to, we're not setting out to find recommendations, although when we do find we can make recommendations, we do feel that's how we add value. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to get a number of recommendations. But I think it's probably in relation to the fact that we carried 2 reviews rather than 1.
Okay, thanks. And the fact that there was a reduction in the number of actual days used over the plan means that additional work and in a shorter time. So I'm sure Richard was rubbing his hands there in terms of the economy. So thank you for that. Are there any further questions from members in relation to what Ellen has had to tell us? Any issues at all? No. Okay. Well, we are very grateful to you for your contribution, for bringing the full report and for addressing our questions. You're very welcome to stay for the duration. If you have other commitments, we also will understand. Oh, apologies. Yeah, absolutely. Please proceed to the follow-up report. I was being a little bit precipitate there. Okay, back to you, Ellen.
Okay. I'm just scrolling down. I'm just wondering, I can't see the follow-up report as part of the pack. So is this something you'd want me to show on screen? Because I have got a sicker report to show on screen as well, because it didn't make the
Well, I think that probably
papers in
accounts.
time.
That probably accounts for my earlier blip. Also, I think if you would share that, please, that would be very helpful indeed, because we haven't got that.
I'll show the progress report first, then.
Yeah,
I think
please.
they were sent as separate papers, weren't they?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Can you all see?
yes,
can
we can
see
see
my
that.
progress
Absolutely.
report?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely.
So this is our progress report that we bring to committees, just to give committee assurance that we're sort of delivering the work for the current financial year. So we're now talking mainly about 2024-25 mainly. Paragraph 2 of this report, we tend to put something there that a message we want to deliver. Obviously, I'll speak about this one a little bit more, because I'm not sure, I can't recall if it was shared in advance. Sorry about that. So we deliver a sort of a message within paragraph 2, and this time round it's about the global internal audit standards, which are due to come in effect again in the new calendar year. So as a firm, we are doing sort of some work in respect to that, but I'll pause for questions in a minute if anybody wants to ask about that one. So we have issued the follow-up to 23-24 since the last committee. That's been issued now in final, so that completes the work for 23-24, and hence we were able to deliver that annual report that I've just presented. So if I take you to Appendix A here, hopefully it's big enough. It just summarises what was on the annex of the annual report. Is just a clean, and we've just confirming that we've delivered the plan for 23-24. If we take you to Appendix B, this is the annual plan for this current financial year, 24-25. As you can see on the top there, the draft report for the procurement strategy is due imminently. The fieldwork is in progress for the cybersecurity, and I've got the remaining 2 pieces of work booked in. They're Q4 work, so that shows you that we're according to schedule. We're going to be delivering this plan as well. Hopefully, we're on track to deliver by the end of the financial year. In the 4th quarter, I also hope to be meeting with management to agree on a plan for the 25-26 financial year, which will be brought then to committee for your approval.
Excellent.
We've got a list then of briefing notes that we've issued since the last committee, and then some further information on the global internal audit standards. Are there any questions?
Ellen, has anything come up within the fieldwork to date on the cyber security matter that would give us any particular cause for concern, given the sort of high profile of that whole issue for authorities?
My understanding is that the fieldwork is currently in process. I've not been alerted to anything, but it's difficult to say at this point. It's still ongoing.
Yeah, it would be premature to comment, I'm sure. Okay. Are there any questions from colleagues on this? Craig?
Just a brief comment again, really. I'm pleased to see that the cybersecurity is being audited to give us hopefully good assurance about the arrangements in place, and so that we're eyes wide open on any risks facing the organisation. So yeah, pleased to see that on the list, and that the field work has commenced on that. Thank you.
Any other comments from colleagues on this, on the detail that's been shared? Professor John.
Thanks. I was trying to raise my digital hand then, but it wasn't working. I don't know whether this is appropriate in this context, but I'll ask and you can tell me if it's not. On cybersecurity, do ethics of our digital engagement come into this area? I'm particularly thinking of a debate we've been having recently in Size of Wales. It's entitled, "Should we stay or should we go?" and that is related to whether, as an organisation, we should migrate away from Twitter and go to Blue Skies as an ethical matter. Do ethics in cybersecurity come into play here, or is that another forum?
It's a bit philosophical for this time on a Monday, but Ellen will give it a go. Yeah.
Don't believe that's part of the scope. I'm trying to check now, but I don't recall that being part of the scope.
Okay. Thanks.
But if I'm not sure how far on they are in the field work. If I could, I'd happily mention it to the auditor, but I'm thinking that might be a different sort of area altogether.
Yeah,
it may well be.
Than cybersecurity.
Yeah. Okay.
More of sort of an ethical one.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Catherine, are there any issues that you'd sort of reflect on from the top in relation to these matters? I see Richard has indicated in the meantime. Richard.
A couple of things. First to say, I think the cybersecurity is for all intents and purposes complete now. And so I think that report is in its draft format. I think I have seen a version of it, so then there's nothing untoward in it.
That's
secondly,
very
I think given that I think we're back on cycle now to get all the audits done within the current financial year. I expect that we should be able to get an audit opinion before September. This is probably addressed to Ellen more than anybody else, so I think we should be able to get that. I'm just thinking in regard to completing our financial accounts and our annual governance statement, so it'd be helpful to get that produced earlier in the new financial year that we can say we'd adopt it.
Is that your annual report, Richard? Yeah, for this year.
Yes, for the 24-25 financial year. Yeah.
My aim is to have that completed for you at the close of this current financial year, or at the very latest the start of the next year, because I'm on track. We're on track to be delivering on time. So I'd be very, very surprised if it was this late in the year this time next year.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Alan. There are lots of witnesses here, and we're heartened by that assurance. Good. Catherine, could I come back to you? Any sort of comments from your perspective on what we've heard, or any issues that you'd wish to alert us to?
I don't think so, thank you. No, I'm pleased that the internal audit programme's proceeding as planned this year after a few years of a bit of a hiatus. So my main reflection is I feel positive about the fact that we've got excellent engagement, we've got a good programme, and it's in the areas that we need it to be. Just on the point about the Twitter /X, I think that's probably one more for a discussion on our communication strategy and social media strategy. I know this comes up it does slightly cross over into sort of security in terms of our aspiration to use TikTok more and that side of things, but I think it's an interesting point and a good discussion. Thank you.
Maybe we could raise that in ways of working.
Yeah. Good point. Thank you, John. And Mark, I'd invite you to comment, please, from Audit Wales perspective. Audit.
Thanks. Just a quick point, I'm sure it's covered, but to double check, if the report has weaknesses and recommendations in terms of cybersecurity, I would not bring it to this open forum. I'd have a private session as part of this meeting, and not have it publicly if there's weaknesses in the report.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. That's a good caution. I should have reflected on that before asking a general question on the point, but that's kind of common sense, I suppose, which I think we all need to take on board. Thank you. If there are no further questions at this stage, I'd just like to thank Ellen once again. Diolch unwaith eto. It's been a very useful and to some extent reassuring, but we're on a path of improvement. We haven't got there, and I suppose we'll never get there, but we've got to keep trying and doing our best. So, diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you very much indeed. Moving now to agenda item 7, compliments, complaints, and FOI update. Catherine, I believe you're speaking to this item, and I'm sure there'll be some comments and some feedback, because again, it's quite a substantial area of our work. Catherine.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm not going to say too much by way of introduction. Couple of points though. You'll recall from the last meeting we were on freedom of information. We were struggling a bit with timelines, etc. And I'm pleased to see that we've got things much better under control. Got some new sort of processes in place. Different members of staff dealing with that, and that's definitely helped get that more where I would like to see it. In terms of complaints as well, I think we're sort of, good control there. Nothing really to bring to your attention by way of lessons learned from those. They're more sort of, low-level operational matters being raised, really. And then on the compliments, I think there's a particular sort of clump of them around the Dark Skies Festival, which was, went really well. And I suppose I just reflect on, with pride really on the level of service that officers are giving to members of the public, particularly our sort of front-facing teams, but also, even some sort of compliments around some of our more internal processes. So, yeah, altogether, I think it's still hard work to encourage everybody to report the compliments that they're getting. And, I'd still really like to sort of bring in a more formal recognition of good service in the organisation as part of our sort of staff development programme. So that remains on my sort of aspiration list for the coming year. But yeah, other than that, so happy to attempt to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. I noticed that in Appendix 2, in relation to the FOI matter, we're roughly on half between those. We're just ahead. 11 responded to within timescales and 10 out of timescale, which is an improvement, but still with some distance to go. To what would you attribute that? Is that the complexity of the requests, or is that related to staff resource and capacity? Just to inform our further improvement.
Yeah, I think for this period it was more to do with the changeover between the old way of doing it and the new way of doing it, and also just getting some different staff in place and ready to take them on. So it's it's that really. I think hopefully next time we report we'll be fully on track. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I'm sure there'll be some comments here from colleagues. Craig.
Yeah, again, mine's more of a comment. So thank you, Catherine, and for the update on FOI and painting a kind of improving picture. That's good to see. And I did have exactly the same specific question that our chair asked as well. So that's already answered. But good to see. And I think, to see at the next meeting that we're answering more within the statutory deadline just will prove that the new processes and the staff and everything are kind of bedding in and people are getting the information that they want in a timely manner. So that's good. And then again, the only other comment I was going to make is about the compliments. So I thought, again, they were really good, and it's nice to see them and that people take time to write in or call in with their comments. And unsurprisingly for National Park, most of those comments in the table are for the front-facing staff, which you acknowledged, Catherine. The wardens, the front of house staff, the events teams, the education teams, and those kind of things, where you might more readily get a service. It'd be good if the more corporate side of the organisation, if they got into the practice. I don't know what internal processes you have in terms of nudging them to kind of send in some compliments. I'm sure some planning applications have been processed efficiently and cleanly, and or payments made effectively and within the required deadlines. If some of those could be on there, give a kind of broader picture, I think that would be great going forward. But nothing major. I just wanted to acknowledge, big well done for everyone providing great services on behalf of the authority.
Thank you, Craig. Councillor Hugh.
Yeah, well, Craig has jumped in and said what I wanted to say, but in complaints on page 11, can you interpret that so I'm sure that I understand it? Where there's a stage 2 complaint, there's the statement requested and accepted, and then lower down stage 2 request and declined. Is that when it's followed through? Is that the word accepted or declined? How do I interpret that?
Yeah, so under our policy, we've retained a 2-step process. So people can make a stage 1 complaint that's either upheld or not. And then they have, we've just updated the policy actually, but they then have a period of time in which they can then request a stage 2, which is effectively a review by me of whether there was anything else we needed to look at. So accepted or declined is at stage 2, I've said, yes, we'll go ahead and look at it in its entirety again, or no, I'm satisfied that we've looked at everything we can and we've exhausted everything that we could possibly have done with that complaint. So that's the distinction between accepted and declined.
Right, is that the response that's given to the complainant, really?
Yeah,
it's not an internal staff thing to say, no, we're declining this, you can tell them, and that it's up to them.
No, it's so often, even in making a decision about whether to take it through to stage 2, I'll review all of the papers that were generated, all of the material that was looked at, to see whether there was any aspect of it which ought to be taken through to stage 2. But there is under the new policy, there's more of an onus on the complainant to be quite specific about what it is they felt we hadn't dealt with at stage 1, so that we can really hone in on the aspect which they're asking for us to look at again. So yeah, we're trying to be clearer and more precise, and clarity on both sides then with us and the complainant about exactly what we're looking at.
Thank you. As I said, and just to note, the freedom of information, we're definitely moving in the right direction, and that's welcome to us all, I would imagine.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Hugh. I'm struck more than anything else by the diversity of the sources of the compliments. I mean, we've got everything from the ukulele band to the CLA director Wales, not always our sort of our warmest cheerleader, and I think that's really positive. Obviously, the Dark Skies has generated an extraordinary level of positivity, which is great, and so many of our front-facing people in estates and in education and so on, and I think that's sometimes for an authority member, it's important to remember the balance of the parks activities, delivering purposes, not always either the corporate stuff or the planning function, which is a little bit more of a thorny nut to crack. One thing that I've become aware of in recent times from informal farmer and landowner feedback that doesn't seem to be referred to, doesn't seem to have made it through to compliments this time round, is the pilot project on hedge planting and related matters, hedge laying and so on, that's been delivered by Bev, David and Sam Harper, because I mean we often associate farmers with protesting and having difficult issues, being confronted with difficult issues and in the current time, and I've heard independently 2 or 3 different bits of feedback to me, because they know I've got something to do with the Bana Brycheiniog, that they found that helpful and positive. So I just put that on the record now. It can't find its way into the official paperwork at the moment. It may be do in the future, but it's worth flagging as another area of positive feedback. Professor John.
Diolch, Clarith. I just wanted to reflect on the challenge we face comparing the wonderful comments and the complaints, and it's fabulous to see them, of course. But the difficulty we see is we have a number of comments complimenting us on support at the waterfalls area, giving advice. We also have a complaint about the lack of information about the waterfalls. So I don't know how we dig down into the same thematic area. Receiving both complaints and compliments is a challenge.
Absolutely. It's a question of balance, I guess, and Catherine perhaps would share a little bit more on that issue. She may have more of the specifics to hand.
Well, yeah, no, I think it is the challenge of the so-called honeypot sites. I mean, the vast majority of people, I'm pleased to say, visit waterfalls, you know, do what they want to do, get good information, and it passes without incident, and hopefully with a lot of enjoyment and sort of understanding of our special qualities and all of those good things. Unfortunately, sometimes people don't get what they need, or things go quite badly wrong when people visit those areas, and you know, we have to balance that through. Obviously, it is an area where we have a strategic partnership around that, where we work closely with a number of players to make sure that we're, you know, giving the right information and trying to service that area as best we can. But I think in other meetings of the authority, I think that whole area is something that we'll come back to in terms of the future strategy for the site, because it does raise different issues and quite challenging issues for us. And I think that point of balance is a difficult one to reach, and maybe not necessarily attainable in the long term, and something, you know, we'll come back to discuss, I'm sure. But no, I agree. It is often many of the things that we do as an authority, which many see as positive. In common with most public bodies, not everybody does, and we have to address those under the policies that we have.
Thanks for that clarity, Catherine. If there are no further questions or comments on that agenda item 7, then I think we can resolve to note that report and its generally positive character, which is good. Moving now to agenda item 8, which is our risk register. Again, for noting, and Catherine to speak to the item. Catherine.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, we presented the risk register. We do our process under the new operating model, where we review this through a series of officer groups and then final run through with executive board. So there are some updated elements of text and so on. Ratings haven't moved considerably, and I think that's a reflection that the underlying risks on the corporate risk register really remain around our financial sustainability and our capacity, and the you know, those two things being very interlinked. So I don't think any of the risks have moved particularly, but so I won't say too much more by way of introduction, but I'm very, very happy to attempt to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions from colleagues? I think Craig is poised, and he is, yes. Craig.
Thank you. Yeah, it's again not really a question, but at the last meeting of audit and risk, there were a couple of risks that were increasing. So actually looking across all the risks this time, the fact that they're either level or improving, there were a couple of improvements on there. Gave me a level of satisfaction in terms of the fact that there's some things that we haven't got there yet in terms of financial sustainability, capacity, etc., and the things that Catherine touched on then. And of course, the accommodation risk, it could end up improving quite soon, depending on the NPA decision. So overall, in terms of where we are, I was fairly pleased to see that kind of the risks weren't increasing again, and so that's the only comment I make. So thank you.
Thanks, Craig. And Professor John, possibly, and then perhaps Catherine will pick up.
Yeah. Very briefly, but probably is one for Catherine. I'm concerned that there is an element of increasing risk. We see this in planning, and we may well see it increasingly, and that's public sector finances, where NRW is being having its resources stretched? And have we considered the implications that NRW's challenge might impact on our planning process?
Thanks, John. That's one that I was going to raise, but you've done so very adequately. Catherine.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I think one of the challenges we have, not just in terms of NRW, but all other public bodies actually are often the statutory consultees on our planning applications. And that's also one of the biggest areas of delay in terms of us meeting our planning deadlines, etc. And obviously those considerations are often highly material to the planning, determining the planning application. So it's certainly something that we're talking about. We're having once a year we have a sort of strategic get together with our sort of area colleagues in NRW. So we'll be doing that again in January, and I'm sure this will come up. And also as at a 3-park level, we do review this point with the Chief Executive of NRW, at the moment her stand-in. So we'll be meeting in a few weeks' time with a senior colleague from NRW to cover a range of issues, one of which will be this impact on all of our planning applications as the National Park authorities. Quite what you can do in mitigation is another question. But it's, you know, we will find the best way through that we can. But I think it just shows the strain that there is across the public finances, and we're all trying to find the best way through that. But it's on the radar, to assure you, and it is something that's being discussed at both a working level and at the most senior executive level in NRW.
Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. And can see Richard is going to come in. I'm just reflecting on the recent news, not just of the financial impact on NRW of potentially having to align to the upcoming Welsh Government budgets, but also adverse news from HMRC. I believe there was either 11 or 19 million pound bill from the HMRC, which had to be settled by our minister's department. So I'm sure that Richard's alert to that kind of issue in relation to our own finances, because it's obviously a massive hit for our partner organisation. Richard.
Yes, William. I think you're right. It's a fairly volatile and unpredictable environment regarding forecasting the finances. Looking at the kind of the risk register, and the comment does say that we've had additional funds. Those additional funds were in respect to the 20. We had, if you remember, we had about 2.5 million at the end of the 23-24 financial year, and part of that was to cover the 24-25 operating deficit, so that's covered. Just as an aside, in the last week or so, we've made a further submission to Welsh Government for additional funding. They kind of notify us normally after Christmas that they might have surplus funds in the department, and we're kind of optimistic that we should have some. I think on the revenue perspective side, we've put in about 1.4 million and 1.1 million additional capital funding, and we should know more about that before Christmas. But obviously, those figures make a huge difference to our viability, and operationally, and when you compare the operation against our National Park grant, we are running a deficit. But we have, the tendency has been for a number of years now that you get these in-year supplements, which kind of act as a buffer. So it's kind of living that with that kind of unknown level of uncertainty, which we've have to get used to, really. Just want to make that general point.
Thanks very much, Richard, for that. I wanted to look briefly at the issues SR02 on the issues of the aged nature of our LDP delivering dyfodol o Banau, but also linked to that the issue of the ongoing matter around nutrients, our proposed statement, which is now, I think, fairly imminent in relation to nutrients management and its impact on land use and development. again, that's one that I think we need to keep a close eye on, particularly because of the impact, the differential impact on particular communities, settlements, and areas of the park. But that may in fact elevate the risk level. It may also be relevant to the legal risk side, but that's a matter for separate discussion later on. It's just one that I think we should be alert to.
Yeah, just to comment on that. So I think there are papers coming to members for the next MPA on both those topics in terms of progressing with the local development plan with the backdrop of financial uncertainty. So I think we'll be addressing that through the paperwork for MPA. And then on the nutrient statement, I think that's also something that will be coming. I think just to make the point that this is the reality of a national park authority having the role as the local planning authority. We do have different purposes and duties to other local planning authorities, and therefore we do take a different stance on some aspects. And I think, that does open an area for us which is quite uncomfortable, but nonetheless, hopefully we'll have a good discussion on it at the MPA.
Absolutely. Yeah, excellent. If there are no further comments or questions, then again I would ask that we note that report. Thank you very much for speaking to it, Catherine. I've not been advised of any urgent business, and I don't think anything's emerged during our session. So in that case, we move to agenda item 10, for which we need legal risk matters, and I would ask that we move into confidential session under the section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, that the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that there would be disclosure to them of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 12, 13, 14 and 16 of Part 4 of Schedule 12A of the above Act, and that the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in the disclosure of that information. Do I have a proposer for that? Professor John, and Craig Stevenson has kindly seconded. Can we take a vote on that, please? And if I'm not mistaken, we can do that by a show of hands. Yeah, we've got that approved unanimously. Thank you very much. Colleagues colleagues on screen in the meeting are entitled to stay for this item, and that point was made in a previous discussion that we had with Audit Wales. More than happy for you to stay and observe, but I'm just checking with Gemma that the live stream is about to end. So thanks to all members of the public who've been following our deliberations this morning. We wish you a good rest of day, and we'll continue into this final agenda item. So